There it goes. So, how are you doing these days?
Good, good. Just appreciating all the little things in life, trying to work on some projects, and staying quarantined, I guess, making the best of what I can with 2020. You know how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2020. I mean, so first, kind of like introduce yourself. You are Ova, the
Yeah.
barista, Miss Barista. Okay.
Ova, Ova the barista. I've worked in specialty coffee for about 10 years. Currently, right now, I'm not working in coffee. I'm actually taking a break and working in a kitchen environment.
Okay.
Um, I was kind of starting to feel burnt out at my job, I think, with the environment I was working in. So I just needed to take a break and try a different avenue just to make sure that I didn't lose my passion for working in coffee. Turns out
Mhm.
a couple weeks later, I'm still passionate about coffee, but I'm starting to like really appreciate my time away from coffee, which I never thought was possible as someone who's been obsessed and worked in coffee for so long. I never thought
Yeah.
this kind of break was what I needed to help me out.
Yeah. So let's backtrack a little bit. Where are you from, and like, and maybe start to go into this love and passion for coffee. Where did this start?
Sure. So I was originally born in Miami, Florida in 93.
Hmm.
And before I turned one, my family moved to Alaska. So I was raised in Alaska most of my life.
Okay.
Uh, in like middle school, I used to have an old passion of wanting to be like a famous singer and go on American Idol and all that stuff. And then, excuse me, some
Yes.
life events just happened where I think like mentally, I was like a different person and not in the right state of mind. And I was just going through a lot of stuff and starting high school. So, like, young Olivia, before I even called myself Ova,
Hmm.
and, trying to figure out where I wanted to be, losing a family member, my godfather.
Oh
He was
wow.
a really big inspiration for me. So, after losing
Oh man.
him, going to high school, I just kind of thought, well, now I don't really want to sing. I don't really want to do anything in life. And coffee kind of came as like a pivotal point for me where I like thought of it out of nowhere, just like in the middle of language arts class my sophomore year of high school.
Okay.
And I kind of like asked myself, like, hey, how would you like to open up your own coffee shop and work in coffee for the rest of your life? And I was like, I never even cared for coffee at the time. So for me, it was like total light bulb popping up in your head kind of deal where I was like,
Yeah.
coffee? Like,
That's kind of, I think how like when people's passions come, it's just kind of like that. And it's almost like, what? You want me to, okay, yeah, I like it, but
yeah. It was
it's,
very sporadic. I was like,
yeah.
is this God or Buddha or somebody talking to me? Like, I know it's not my mom and I know it's not my teacher because we're working on this other assignment, but it just kind of gave me an idea of like, there might be some hope in this coffee thing,
Mhm,
whatever this coffee thing is.
mhm.
And then pretty much from then on, I did research. Like, I would go on Google and be like, how to open a coffee shop. What is coffee? What is espresso? And then I'd learn terms like mocha, latte, espresso macchiato, and I'm like, what is this language, And like cold brew and different brewing methods, and that kind of like sparked my interest. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna own a coffee shop. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah, and for the layperson, for me, it's like, okay, this is either good or I hate to say bad, but there's very few coffees that I've just said I just can't drink. But there's some coffees that are better than others, in my opinion,
Yeah,
and
and I think
and
you could.
so there's some for like various times, and like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'm like driving and I don't mind stopping at certain gas stations and grabbing a cup, and then there's times where I'm like, no way, I need something like really really good, and
Yeah.
so um, is it like where do you know like where do some of those gas stations get their beans? Are they like from the some places as that some of the shops would, or no? It's just kind of like they buy this bulk stuff.
Um, well, for me, like the last couple of months, I've been ordering a lot of coffee online and actually not ventured out as much. Like I just started traveling again. I went to Nashville a couple weeks ago with my husband, and
Hmm.
we checked out some local coffee shops there. But based on where you're at in Dunwoody, there's a few coffee shops that I've heard of that I've been interested in checking out, and they offer like online ordering. So I can start listing those off now if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, what ones will for online ordering, or are there
Yeah,
any that are open? Like if say they're going to the skate park and they're like, yeah, I just got to drop in
yeah, for
and grab a cup of like really good coffee.
Okay. So for ones to like stop in and grab a coffee if you're on your way to skateboard, these are places roughly about like 20-ish minutes from you, like not including Starbucks or gas station coffees. Just local roasters I found. There's one called Fellows Cafe in Roswell, Georgia. I actually have a friend who's, I think he still works there. His name is Brent, but that's like a really cool like breakfasty brunch spot. The owner,
Yeah.
I think they're like an Australian couple. They're really cool people. I've talked to them online, trying to help like promote events when I was helping a friend do that for different coffee shops in Atlanta.
Yeah, so if they're coming from from the north or the west down to Dunwoody to Brook Run Skate Park, they could kind of stop in Roswell really quick and grab a
Yeah,
cool cup
Fellows
on the
Cafe.
way, you know. And so depending on which way you're driving, you're gonna have to, you know, if you're in say Woodstock or Canton, you're gonna have to go through Roswell anyway. So there you go.
Much. Yeah.
Yeah.
The coffee that they use right now is methodical coffee. So they don't roast it, but it's a local coffee roaster based out of Greenville, South Carolina. I've had their coffee a few times as espresso and drip, and I like it. You know, it's like a good pick me up, get me through my day, give me coffee fuel kind of deal. So yeah. And if you ever are looking for like a brunch spot, I think that place is cool.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah. And
And
then
so what else do you have in that area?
oh yeah. So there's another spot called Session Stand. I actually went there like I think 2 or 3 years ago, just on a whim of checking out coffee shops OTP.
Hmm.
And I've only been there once, so it's been a long time. But I really like their espresso that they were offering. It's in Marietta, Georgia, I think. Yeah, and it's kind of like a little shop tucked away in like this cool neighborhood, so you can easily like skateboard or walk around the neighborhood. I also really liked that they had like a nice patio area where it
Hmm.
was kind of like surrounded by like a lot of bushes. So it was almost like sipping on coffee and cold brew, like in a garden area. It's pretty simple, but if you need a quick grab and go coffee and a pastry and you want to walk around this cool neighborhood, you can do that or just take your coffee to go kind of thing.
Cool. 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 And so explain the differences. I mean, I kind of have a good idea between you know, like a hot brew or a cold brew or
Mm.
and like what's temperature is it different temperature for different beans that you would like say roast or brew them at?
So temperature can play an effect when it comes to like the tasting profile or the quality of your coffee. So recommended temperature is usually like 195, 201. But if you want to be like a coffee badass in the sense of like trying different temperatures, you can always change it up and you'll always pick up different flavor profiles. So sometimes I'll brew with the French press and I'll do your typical 201-degree water,
Mm-hmm.
and I have an electric kettle, but before I had the electric kettle, I would use just like a candy thermometer or a regular thermometer and just
Mm-hmm.
put that tea kettle I had. And I would brew water at like 165 or 145 degrees Fahrenheit. And I
Okay.
found when you change the temperature, you'll either bring out more like pleasant flavors, depending on what coffee you're using, or some kind of like more deep and subtle notes, kind of like sultry, like red wine or like mulled wine. So that's like one of the things that can affect your coffee, and it can work in both good and bad ways, but for the most part good if you're willing to experiment with it.
Yeah, because I guess if like are there like I guess specific instructions on certain beans? Does it say, you know, okay, this is the best temperature, or is it more like this is what you want to
So
pull out of it?
yeah, like a lot of coffee shops, the cool thing if you go on their social media or on the website, they'll have like brew guides or like recommended recipes, and you can use that as like a good starting point. So like what I do right now, the last couple of months, I've been doing French press. It's easy for me to like kind of get it going for the morning. It's quick to brew
Hmm.
for 4.5 minutes. And it's also something easy that my husband can brew if he wants coffee and I'm not there. And he's like, how do I figure out this coffee thing? So he likes using that as well. So we do 34 grams of coffee beans that I weigh on a kitchen scale, and then I use about 700 grams of water. And then just from there, I just kind of vary like how much water, how much coffee I want to use, and just kind of experiment a little with it depending on how I'm feeling or what coffee I'm using. So there's different variables like water temperature, how old the beans are. Like I like to brew coffee that's up to like 6 7 months old and just kind of see how it still tastes, like if I'm
Okay.
towards the end of that bag, and just taste it to see what flavor profile I'm picking up from it. Sometimes I'll mix coffee beans and make like my own blend in that sense of like mixing one coffee with another company's coffee and just kind of
Yeah.
play around with that too. So the possibilities are endless, but there are like certain like recommendations that you can follow or recipes is like a good guideline if you've never brewed coffee and you just want like something like a baseline to start off with.
Yeah. Okay. And so I guess in the future, well, maybe we could talk about places that I may be going or various skaters may be going. and
Mhm.
some like cool coffee places, and then also like some international stuff. Yeah, like because I know you've traveled a great bit. Like, tell me a
Yeah.
bit about your travels and and like what you discovered in various places in the coffee world. You know.
Yeah. So I would say the last like 5, 7 years of traveling for coffee. So it's common and not common in the sense of like when I've asked people to come with me to travel, I'll say, yeah, I'm going to this spot particular. And they're like, oh, cool. There's so many like bars and restaurants you should check out. And I'm like, oh, I'm mostly here for coffee, but I'll take their recommendations as well, because I can't survive solely on coffee. I think like
Yeah.
one thing I really take note whenever I'm visiting a coffee shop or a coffee roaster in said city or town is the experience and then the quality of the product. I also like to look up the company's like values of like how they started, what they appreciate, what
Yeah.
they want to promote. I think that's really important with any business and above and beyond like local businesses and even coffee shops that are local here in Georgia too. Like that's something I pay attention to
Mhm.
more than like what they're brewing for coffee. Like if they
Yeah.
have good coffee, that's also a plus. But I think the experience and like meeting the owners and like seeing how they started up was kind of what inspired me to like continue staying in coffee and also the atmosphere of like when I visit a coffee shop, how I'm being treated by the baristas or whoever's making my coffee or ringing me up. That's
Mhm.
something I think that plays hand in hand with good coffee.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like a similar thing for, you mentioned food. I think also in like skateboarding, we're kind of like finding, not necessarily finding destinations, but maybe like traveling a bit or going somewhere, and also in music, and you're going, okay, this is what I like to do anyway, where I'm like at home. So let me find some cool places that are other in other parts of the world that I would, coffee,
Yeah,
beer, good food,
for sure.
a
Yeah.
good skate park. And so, for me, it's good to, and thank goodness for Google, because I guess it used to be like the phone book, and
Yeah.
you would try to how would you find a good cup somewhere. But it's also good to have expertise of somebody who does it for sure. you
Yeah.
know
I think like
um
always asking friend recommendations or just even like if you have social media, you can like post something. I've done this in the past of like, hey, I'm going to San Francisco or Las Vegas. Does anyone have any coffee, food, beer, and wine recommendations? And I just kind of take up from there, aside from like looking up local coffee roasters and like wine places or like beer breweries and stuff. And I've just kind of refined it to like the time allotted per trip and to see what I can come up with.
yeah.
But yeah, so when I was like about 15, 16 years old, I started like this list just from an online article of like 58 coffee shops across America. And
Mhm.
that was like the baseline of like, here's some cities I could check out coffee shops and then just kind of go from there to see what other coffee shops or local coffee roasters are in that state. And also recommendations from friends, as I mentioned earlier. So
Cool, 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 cool. Well, I can't wait to talk to you again sometime in the near future, on a
yeah,
regular basis. And I'll say, hey, this is what side of town I'm going to, or where I'm headed in the world to
for sure.
hopefully not kill myself, but still ride the bulls
Yeah,
and have a good time and
yeah,
drink the coffee that I love to drink. So take care of yourself. Good to see you. Thanks.
cool. Good to see you. Bye.
Bye.